So, hello guys, and welcome to the third session of AI for climate activists. And today's session is going to be about algorithmic bias and discrimination in the AI environment. Um, the session's objective are basically understanding what algorithmic bias is and how it happens, identify the sources of bias in AI systems, recognize the magnified impact on the global south and climate justice, and um, having a strategic discussion for advocacy and mitigation. A quick recap and the roadmap. We have been through understanding the AI and why it matters for activists. We have also seen the AI driven threats to civic space. And coming up next are the AI and data colonialism. So let's get to understand um, what is the algorithmic bias. As simple as it is, algorithmic bias occurs when an algorithm produces unfair, prejudiced, and discriminatory outcomes. And basically, AI is trained to find patterns, but if the patterns reflect existing societal inequalities, the AI reproduces them simply. So the key point is here is it is often not intentional, but the impact is huge and it is harmful. So let's try to understand the concept through an analogy I like to call the crooked mirror. So imagine AI as a mirror that is reflecting the world, okay? And our society is the input. So AI is the mirror and it will be reflecting basically the society. Our society holds historical and systemic biases. So if the mirror is built using this flawed input, the reflection it shows basically are going to be flawed. So the AI's decision will be distorted and biased. Um, it is as simple as it can get. A mirror cannot reflect something that the input is not. Simply, it cannot change. So here, with the types of bias, there is bias everywhere, and through loads and loads and loads um, of types. Discrimination. Um, there are geographic biases. There is basically ethical, ethnic, race, gender, and basically every kind of bias that our society has. And algorithmic bias is basically divided into two major biases. The first one is systemic bias, which is existing in the real world through history. So, historical racism, colonialism, sexism, um, gender inequality, and ethnic, also types of discriminations and stuff like that. So, this is the primary driver because this is what humanity have in it. And there is the technical bias is that it's a bias that arises from errors in data collection, data sampling, and algorithmic design. And this often amplifies the underlying systemic bias. So let's understand where does the bias come from. So basically, it comes from bias training data, which is the most common issue here, the human bias in design, the problem formulation and metrics, and the feedback loops. So artificial intelligence models get fed data sets, and if these data sets are not good, so the training is not good, so the outcome is not good. And human bias So basically, we are getting to discover them all. So in bias training data, what really happens is that the data we use to teach artificial intelligence models does not accurately represent the entire population or reflects historical discrimination. For example, when it comes to facial recognition, systems has less accurate um, input and outputs and inputs for people with darker skin tone or women because the data sets were historically dominated by lighter um, skin men. So the AI learns prejudice and then enforces it because it's not taught to recognize or to showcase darker skinned men and women, whether light skinned or darker skin or people with color in general. So that's how it enforces the bias here. The human bias in design and development. And it's basically the values, assumptions, and blind spots of the developers themselves and the designers, the people who are creating the AI models would influence the system. So, for example, developers unconsciously defines risk in a way that targets their own assumptions about certain communities. So, um, for example, I don't know. I don't wanna take examples from real work. I don't wanna offend anyone, but a developer, for instance, define risk based on his own assumptions and his own historical beliefs. That that risk happens to be a certain category of people. For example, so AI is going to enforce that because in a way that is maybe unintentional and human, um, the developer or the designer messed it up. So the team building the AI needs to be as diverse as the world that is using the AI. Next, what really happens in problem formulation and metrics, and it is how we define the problem itself. So, for instance, we measure success some way, and others measure it some other way. So, it is critical to really define in a very proper and fair way. So, if an AI is built to predict success based on a biased historical metric, it's going to be screwed. So, for instance, let's say test scores are skewed by socioeconomic factors. So, the AI will make biased predictions because if you do not have that much money, for example, in your bank account, that means that you are a failure, and it's not. If you did not get that grade in school, then you failed or you are not worthy, and it's not because types of intelligence are diverse and it's not a specific metric. So, getting to define what a metric or what value is, it is critical. So the system's goal itself can be inherently unfair. Last but not least is the feedback loops. So it's basically there is a vicious cycle where the AI biased output influences the real world, which then generates more biased data, reinforcing the original error of the data sets that are teaching the AI. So here we are into a loop ourselves. And as an example here, predictive policing, so biased policing data, AI targets certain neighborhoods, more arrests in these areas, AI is proven right by new biased data. So it eventually uses whatever you feed it. That's what the feedback loop is. Um, Now moving to impacts on global south, unfortunately, existing structural and economic inequalities because AI data centers and they use a lot of land and they use a lot of low wage um, um, jobs, unfortunately. Lack of representation in global tech development. Global South is not as represented as it should be, and also historical exploitation, which AI can easily perpetuate. Impact on civil society now is the discrimination in resource allocation. AI unfortunately unfairly allocating aid, water, and or energy resources. The exclusion from services, sometimes AI-driven systems denying finance, healthcare, or education access to marginalized groups. Um, and last but not least, amplified surveillance and repression. So, biased facial recognition or monitoring disproportionately targets activists and minority groups. Impact on climate justice, the environmental injustice, because biased models might overlook or downplay environmental damage in poorer or marginalized communities. Misinformation as well, because it can hallucinate, it can give harmful and some narratives that are not true to reality. So that way it undermines local climate advocacy efforts. Also, AI that fails in the global south can mask climate risks for the most vulnerables. So, here are some strategies on how to mitigate biased AI. So, how to counter is basically diverse data collection. We have to ensure, or the companies that are creating the artificial intelligence models have to ensure that data sets are representatives of all groups and context, especially the local context. Fairness in auditing, so regularly test and evaluate AI systems using specific metrics to check for reliability and discriminatory outcomes. Um, Also, transparent AI, we have to demand to know what data is used and how the AI reaches a decision. So, how does it work? Its way to, to the output. And last but not least, human oversight. So, ensuring key decisions are always reviewed and approved by a real human being, not just algorithms. Because algorithms, at some point, they mess up because they cannot think outside of the box. They cannot think outside of the data set that you've fed them. So, as simple as that. How to act as climate activists. The critical awareness. We have to question whose data is missing or who is this system harming. We have to advocate for data justice. We have to use our understanding of local context to identify and challenge biases that AI system miss. And we have also to partner up with tech ethics and civil society groups. So it's basically getting united for it to be ours, to own our data, to own our issues, and to own the way artificial intelligence models can help us target these issues. A quick discussion you can have with your colleagues and teammates is what example of algorithmic bias have you witnessed in your own countries or climate work? So, have you go with your organization people or with your peers about this, and let us know the outcome of the conversation. And finishing up with the takeaways, algorithmic bias is a direct reflection of societal inequality in code and data, in zeros and ones, in loops of algorithm. biased data, not bad intention all of the times. It can be, but not always, is the primary culprit. Activists also must be critical users and powerful advocates for a fair AI. So the core principle that we need to take with us from today's session is that AI must be designed with affected communities, not just for the communities. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that it was clear. Please do not hesitate to reach out and tune in on power2voices.org to find the rest of our sessions. And thank you so much.